I think client stories are always interesting. Um, Recently had a closing with a guy that I've been working with for 10 years. Um, we met, well, actually, he was referred to me by another client. We met at the time he was married, and we were looking for a house for him and his family. Um, and him and his wife ended up getting divorced, and they kind of put the home purchase on pause. Um, he actually, kind of a couple years later, ended up getting remarried. His wife at that time, I think, had a friend that was a real estate agent or something like that. They ended up buying a house together. I think it was really her house, and unfortunately, that marriage didn't work out. He ended up getting in an accident at work that caused him to not be able to work and to go on disability. So I know a lot of people that get disability, they don't get a whole lot of income. So at that point, he was, is still not making a whole lot of money through that. But he was persistent. He kept telling me, he kept talking to me, I'm going to buy a house, David. I'm going to buy a house. I'm like, okay, let's figure it out. He started doing a lot of research and actually found a program that is specific for people that are on disability. And he called me up and he's like, I found this program, this is going to help me out. And I'm thinking, I'm like, I've never heard of this program before. Like, I know the amount of money that you make, like there's not a lot available, for that. And he kept telling me, he's like, this is going to work. This is going to work. I'm trusting in God. I know this is going to work. And he got me in touch with the lender that he was talking to. And we talked, and there definitely was a possibility for him to buy a house. So we started looking, and he's got some neat ideas. He wants to do, some kind of Airbnb stuff, some ways to make a little extra money with the house that he's living at. So we found a house, and we went under contract, and I was still a little skeptical. I'm like, the income's not there, like the amount of money that you need, And we ended up closing on this house, and he had like $200 out of his pocket. And his payment was like $700 a month, which is unheard of especially with the way the interest rates are now and the way the home prices are. And it's just such a beautiful story for, this 10-year journey that we've been on. I feel like he's family at this point.
Yeah, you have a lot of like client stories, like client success stories where we don't know the back end. So it just hits you square in the feels, because you've walked it out with him. And, this is my favorite part of the story. Well, there's a lot of I'm just going to focus in on this one because I love the whole story. But his son, when you originally started talking to them, he was young.
He's 7 years old.
And he was so excited about his Spider-Man bedroom.
That's right.
And so I think my favorite thing, because part of my job, if you all don't know, is I am in charge of the closing gifts. It's one of my favorite things to do. We found
Takes care of her shopping addiction.
it's dual purpose. But one of the things that we put in their closing basket was Spider-Man golf balls, because he's now almost an adult.
He's 17, senior in high school.
Right.
Plays golf.
Still
for the
loves
golf
Spider-Man.
team. Still loves Spider-Man. I told him I teared up when I did this because it was just it was just awesome. But I told him, I was like, I think your son's probably a little too old for a Spider-Man room at this point.
Yeah.
But I got him Spider-Man golf balls because he's a great golfer. He's getting offers for scholarships to go play in college, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was awesome to be able to give him his Spider-Man something
Right.
With his new house.
This just that you remember, like the fact that there have been hundreds of people that you have closed on in between meeting them. You know what I mean? Like, I just, that's why I'm like, hits you square in the feels, because you could have forgotten that. And you forget a lot. But that little Spider-Man tucked back in your heart there, it was so cool, so sweet. And I loved his story because sometimes we don't get to hear the backstory, but just knowing, like, yeah, I think it's like encouraging, because like people have a dream. They want to own a home, and sometimes your dreams take longer than you want them to.
That's right.
That gives me hope for some of my own, dreams outside of real estate. But that was such a beautiful, cool story.
Yeah. What was kind of the cherry on top too was we got to the closing table, and you don't get, depending on what party you represent. So in this case, I was representing the buyer. I don't really hear or know much about the seller other than their name and a signature on the contract. So you don't really get their backstory. You don't really know what's going on. And we sit down at the closing table, and it's the lady, the seller, is almost in tears, and she is just praising God and just saying how much this sale of this house is a blessing to her. Apparently, she was a single mom, bought this home, as a single mom with scraping every penny she had. And she is now in a new relationship, and the sale of this house will pay off their debt and be able to give them a new home for this new chapter in her life.
Yeah.
And that was just awesome. I mean, they're both just talking about what a blessing this home is, what a blessing it was to the seller to be able to, do that and, start the next chapter, and what a blessing it was to my client to be able to actually purchase a home and start the next chapter of his life there with what he was trying to do. So that was really neat too, to be a part of that, and, just see how God works, and how, this was just such a blessing for both people.
Yeah. It reminds me of our little cul-de-sac. So we bought our house, and a week later, like our neighbor next door, they bought the houses at the same time. I mean, like we bought the house, but we closed 1 week apart. And I just remember her coming to the door, and she was like, "Hello, here's my name." And she was like, "How old are your kids?" And I was like, at the time, they were younger, but they were the exact same ages as her kids. And she was like, "Praise God, I prayed for this." And it's been so beautiful because Chase and her son are the same age. They're the babies, and they're like brothers. They're inseparable. And it's been like that since moment one. She's one of my best friends. And then I even look at like the people who have come into the cul-de-sac, like we really adored the people across the way. I mean, we were friends with them. Our kids were friends. It was kind of a bummer when they moved, but the people who moved in after them, like, it's so evident that they were meant to be in our cul-de-sac with their unique situation and their scenario that they're going through. Like the way, anyway, it's like beautifully knit together, and you don't really think about that when you're moving in, like, because it's like our neighbor. The reason why they bought that house is because the people there got a divorce, and then like the people that we bought our house from, they were just downsizing. And so, but it's kind of cool to like know these things, and how they had to move on to their next stage of life in order for us to have this like really tight-knit community. And it's so good. I just love that. I love a good story.